Live from Kakariko Village. Broadcast throughout the Retroverse, transmitted to the real world via a maze of wires connecting a Super Nintendo to a Wii, to a Wi-Fi network, and finally to the Internet. The Techno Funk Boy presents the Retro Zoo Super Show. Now here are your hosts, Kai and Steven.
Welcome back to the Retro Zoo Super Show, and I am your host, Kai, and we are joined today by Ravenint. Hello.
Hello.
So, you ready for a Ravecade?
Yes. I don't think that was on the agenda.
No, it wasn't. You're actually here because you convinced me that I needed to continue with the plot of Final Fantasy IV, and as punishment, I am making you join me.
Yeah, that's what I get for mentioning stuff. But like I told you, the problem is everyone does up to Mount Ordeals, and then they just kind of brush through the rest of the plot.
Yeah.
And it's only a third of the way through the game.
It really is, yes. It is, it's a well, and you know this, there's like a whole speedrun category that stops at Mount Ordeals, because it's such a nice stopping point. But I was expecting to go a lot farther last week. But I was like in Mount Ordeals, and I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, oh wow, this is a long episode, and we probably need to shut this thing down at some point. So apparently I just talk too much.
No, not at all.
It's one of those things. It's like whenever I'm like by myself, I always plan for it to be a shorter episode, just because, it's a lot easier to talk for an hour with two people than it is to talk by yourself for even like 45 minutes. But apparently I get wound up on this game.
That's understandable. It is such a great game.
Yeah. So, we're, since we didn't intend for this, because if I had known we were going to do this, I would have like titled last week's episode like Final Fantasy IV Plot, instead of just Final Fantasy IV Plot Part 2. Because, Part 2 and Part 1 weren't actually all that connected. And, the first episode was just kind of production and systems and gameplay and all that, and Part 2 was plot. So it doesn't really fit for this to be Part 3, so I'm thinking about calling this Final Fantasy IV Part 2 Part 2.
It kind of goes with the rest of the naming conventions.
Yes.
Japanese 4, American 2.
Right.
Wait, did you say Final Fantasy? I thought we were talking Phantasy Star today.
Oh.
That goes on my notes. All right, let me just get rid of these.
Oh gosh. Well, we really should do this like every week, but I actually this time asked our Facebook group and some friends on the interwebs about their reaction to this game, any fond memories. And we did get some nice comments that I wanted to peruse before we get going. One of our top fans said it was my first JRPG with an actual story, and my last JRPG with a good story. Pretty sure that was you.
Sounds like a highly intelligent person.
Right. Oh, when Cecil first defeats his dark self and you hear the Lunarian's theme for the first time and the screen flashes all sorts of colors. That is the Mount Ordeals part, and that's obviously a favorite for a lot of people. One person put You Spoony Bard, which is amazing. One person put 2 or 4 Bit Conflicted with smiley face. The Golbez theme. And we're actually going to get into some music later, but you know, the Golbez music is really, really great. And then somebody put Final Fantasy V is my favorite. I love Bart and the other characters and the job system. Like, well, great, thanks. But he goes, but number 4 I like because Cecil is a Dark Knight, then a Paladin. As I said, just a favorite moment. One of our friends, Wes, the Hinchin dad, who has been on the show before, said I have so many good memories of playing this game this year. Because he actually played it for the first time earlier this year. And this is one of those times that I think I might have mentioned that, like, you know, you always wonder if your favorite childhood games are actually good games, and then when somebody like an adult plays them for the first time, you're like, yeah, you have to play that, and in your mind you're thinking, oh my goodness, I hope this game doesn't suck. And and he really enjoyed it, and so that was encouraging to me that I'm on the right track. But he also put, but the best part was at the mountain and that big changeover happened. Not to spoil it for anyone, but that was really good. Like, that's helpful. That did not spoil it for anyone. But that was Cecil changing into Paladin. Josh from the Backlog Breakdown says, one of the things that sticks out in my memory about the game was the exploit for easy leveling in the Summoner's Cave. That may have only been possible in the Vita version. That actually isn't possible in all the versions. There are several really good places where you can I sometimes even glitch it a little bit, but you're mostly exploiting the way the enemies work for leveling.
Is that the float spell?
Yes, that one's the float spell where this monster will continue to summon another monster that casts Quake. And so he'll summon the monster casts Quake, you're floating so it doesn't actually hurt you at all. Then you kill the summoned monster. Then the original monster will call him again. And you can just keep doing that forever. And so, like, people gain like 30 levels in one battle. Cause every time you beat the summoned monster, you get more experience. It's fantastic. There's another one like that, where it's it might be in the Tower of Babel. I'm trying to remember exactly where, but there's like a sensor that summons help, and you can essentially do the same thing. If you time these right, though, one kind of quirky thing about the game is that if you throw a Phoenix down on, like if you target the enemy right before he dies with a Phoenix down, and then like one character attacks and he dies, and then you throw that Phoenix down, it will revive that monster with 0 hit points, and so it immediately dies again. And so your experience counts for killing it twice, which is pretty great.
That's interesting.
And so if you time it right, you could actually throw like 2 Phoenix Downs on the same dead monster, and really exploit that for some good experience. Some of these speed runs do that. The other kind of experience exploit that I've started to using is actually on Mount Ordeals on the way down, because the way experience works in the game is when somebody enters your party for the first time, they are at a set level. But if they leave the party, they continue to gain experience along with Cecil. And so however much experience Cecil gets, they are also getting that same amount. So when characters come back to your party later, they won't be like, 30 levels behind. But when you're coming down from Mount Ordeals, you're a paladin now, and all the undead monsters on the mountain just really can't hurt you much anymore because you've got, like the holy element to you. And so after a couple of battles, once you've gained like 10 levels, because you start with level 1, but once you gain like 10 levels, you can kill off the other party members and just battle everything by yourself. And if you do that, you just start raking in levels. I did it for like an hour and I gained like 40 levels. And so your ending party, which is Kane, Rydia, Rosa, and Edge, of course, and Cecil. Of those people, 3 of those have already been in your party, so they're gaining experience right along with you. And so at the end of the game, the only one you really have to worry about is Edge, but he doesn't really help much anyway. And don't tell him I said that, but
now see, it's doing stuff like that. It's exactly why Edge gets a bad rap.
Because everybody's like at level 70 and he's at 35.
I always liked his character.
I actually really do like him, and I'm looking forward as I'm getting more into the after years of seeing him more. The problem with him in the game is not that he was a bad character. It was just like he was introduced so late in the game that you're really just like, this game should be ending soon, and I'm trying to feel bad about this ninja, and I kind of do, but we're trying to save the world here. We've already kind of all done our stories, and it feels like his story is very rushed because he was introduced so late in the game.
Yeah, he does have a good character arc, though.
Having to kill his parents?
Yeah.
Kills his parents and takes the throne from him. Just like any good prince would do.
That way. I saw it more of a, sort of a Greek tragedy thing.
Oh, yeah. But that's not as much fun. It is remarkable, like, how many people in the game end up taking a throne because of somebody's actually died, or actually in the case of Yang, the king of Fabul just retires. And he's like, oh, you make a better king, here you go, which is kind of great. But Cecil he's not, not actual nobility, except, half Lunarian. But yeah, he just takes over Baron. The king's dead. I'm getting married. I'm taking the throne. That's all there is to it.
Hey, someone's going to step up.
Right. Oh, but so we're actually going to start in where we left off last time. So it's pretty rare that we have 2 connected episodes where I would actually say, hey, go listen to last week's if you don't know what we're talking about. But this is one of those cases. So did you listen last week?
I did.
Oh, great. What did we Oh, yeah, the Final Fantasy IV. So, getting into it, we left off at Mount Ordeals. And I think that's pretty much where the game realistically ends. You disagree. You think, hey, there's a lot more plot. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. But you are now a paladin. If y'all remember for last week, we have Tella in our party, and we have the twins, Palom and Porom. Palom and Porom being 2 of my favorite characters, and they get a lot of hate. Are you fans of the twins?
Yeah, they kind of grow on you.
They grow on you.
At least they did with me.
Well, what's fantastic, and we're going to talk about the after years eventually, but like Palom in the after years, I don't know how old he's supposed to be. It's like 30, and he is a total jerk still. Like still. Huh? I mean, he's like, dude, you're like 30 years old and you help save the world. How are you still immature? And of course, Porom is like super mature still, and like really responsible for everything, like she's always been. But it was kind of entertaining to see him just completely be the same Palom that we always have known and loved. But at least
he's probably still living in the Elder's Tower basement, living off of Cheetos and Mountain Dew.
Well, I could totally see him doing that, yeah. we're out of Cheetos. I helped save the world, you know?
Give me some of them crocodiles, will ya?
Oh, gosh. Oh, yeah. So we're going to get into his story, his extended story a little bit more. And actually, his is one of the chapters that I really loved. Despite him just making a complete fool of himself in wonderful ways. But, so...
Cecil keeps inviting him back to the castle. Like, yeah, come on into the throne room. Come through that hallway.
Right.
And he's like, no.
And, you know, and he, it's like, at the end of the game, he's at the wedding. And it's like, that's really soon. That's really fast to go through that room again.
Yeah, I'm not sure you'd get me in there again.
Right. I mean, much less like, apparently just a few days later, it's like, hey, you remember when you pretty much died? Well, we'll go visit that spot. Oh, gosh. So, of course, actually we're pretty close plot-wise to that point, but you come down from Mount Ordeals, and one thing I don't think I mentioned last week, but when you are bathed in light at the top of Mount Ordeals, that actually jogs Tella's memory, and he remembers Medio. Which is why he was up there to begin with, is searching for the spell Medio. And his spell list suddenly fills out, which is great, because now we're getting to the point where Tella's not really being all that helpful anymore. The twins are becoming as powerful as him with a lot more magic points. And every time Tella levels up, he actually gets weaker. And his magic points his max magic never goes up. It stays at 90. The reason is because now Medio is in your spell book, and the game doesn't want you casting it. And so, Medio costs 99 magic points, and Tella only has 90 permanently. Unless you underflow it, which I think we actually talked about in a previous episode, but he does remember a bunch of spells, which now has made him useful again. And you return to Mysidia, where the elder's like, oh, wow, okay, I'm really expected you to just die. And the twins were there to pretty much make sure you died. And Palom, this is like the worst kept secret ever, because Palom keeps half saying that they're just there to spy on you and not to really help. And Porom keeps telling him to shut up. And but now the elder is understanding. He's like, oh, okay, no, you really have turned from your evil ways. Okay, well, I guess we have to support you now. And so they give you access to the Serpent Road, which is kind of this teleportation thing between Mysidia and Baron, which is very convenient for us, because that's exactly where we need to go. So it was very nice for the Lunarians to put this teleportation device at the exact place we needed it.
Anytime in this world you can avoid ships of any kind is a good thing.
That turns out to be true in the after years as well. And I can't wait to talk about that, because it's the most infuriating part of the game. Oh my gosh, the number of shipwrecks.
Don't ever travel by ship or airship.
Oh man. And here's the other thing is, am I calling it right? It's the Serpent Road, isn't it? Or is that Final Fantasy VI? Anyways, it's messed up in the after years, because they're trying to add levels, right? They're trying to add dungeons in the after years. And so now this road is not a teleportation device. It is it's like a tunnel with a bunch of undead things in it. And it actually turns into a dungeon, and you're like, dang, I just wanted to teleport like in the old days. But you get into Baron, you get into the town of Baron, and they there's a pass through the waterway to get into the castle itself. Now, remind me if Is it Sid's family that gives you the access? Because he's disappeared?
No, Yang has the key on him.
Yang, that's right. Oh, thank you. So you find Yang, who was knocked over the edge of the ship when the Leviathan attacked. And you find him, but he's been brainwashed. Surprise, surprise. It's a common theme. And you basically have to beat him up. Once you hit him enough, he comes to his senses. Which,
as you do.
As you do, yeah. And what's hilarious is his wife knows about this thing about him. And later in the game, she gives you a skillet to hit him.
Right, I forgot about the frying pan.
The frying, yeah, it's so good. And it's like, she has no, like, he's hurt later, and she has no sympathy. She's like, take this frying pan and just hit him. Oh, it's so good. So yeah, so now we have, thankfully, another fighter in the party, because before it was Cecil up front and protecting a bunch of wizards. But now Yang has joined, and you go through the waterway underneath Baron, and that gets you into the secret entrance of the castle. So when you go in, and I always found this thing very entertaining because this never fooled me for a moment. You find the king's advisor, Bagan, and he's like, oh, thank goodness you've come. I'm going to help you. I joined the party. And I'm immediately thinking, wait a minute. You can't have more than 5 people in the party.
6 people, yay.
Right. It's like, that's not going to work at all. What is this, Final Fantasy VI? And immediately, like, as they start walking, the twins just stop, and it's this really cool thing. And Porom is like, no, he stinks. He's a monster. And Bacon's like, what are you talking about? And then you start a fight with him, and it's like this crazy, hideous monster. It's like, I can't believe I didn't notice that before. But, this is actually one of the really cool fights where, like, there's multiple parts to them, and we're going to get to this again when we get to the Mega Sisters. But like each part does a different thing. And so you have to figure out the patterns so that, you don't waste your time just whooping up on stuff that's just going to be healed later. But that's a pretty cool fight. And, you immediately get through and go to the king, but the king is not the king. The king has been replaced by one of the elemental archfiends, Kanazo. I still use the old words for these. This is like one of the areas of the game that I thought was actually really difficult. Just because it was 2 kind of tough boss fights right in a row.
Yeah, this one came down to timing.
Yeah. And this, like a lot of the bad guys, they have like defenses they can put up, and Kenizo in particular starts gathering water to use his, it was like a flood technique or a wave technique, and he could also hide in his shell, and so you had to time things properly to hit him when he was weak and not protecting himself.
Yeah, if you could hit him with Tello's Lightning 3 when he had the water gathered, the fight was over.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Massive damage to him.
Yeah. So the battle ends, and then Sid shows up, and he has just escaped from prison, and he's come to whoop up on the king. Now, if you remember Sid, I don't even know if I mentioned it, but Sid he's the engineer that builds the airships. And so he's been imprisoned by the king, because everybody who questions this king is imprisoned or sent on suicide missions. And so he comes out and he's about to whoop out the kings, and he sees Cecil there, and he's like, oh, great. And he joins the party, and immediately they're like, wait a minute, this doesn't work. You can't have 6 people in the party. So you know what's coming next. Okay, well, it actually does look like we have a caller now, and so might be a good place to just pause and get this call. Okay, hello, line 1, you are on the air with Kai and Ravenint. Welcome.
Yeah, hey, this is Josh.
Hey, Josh, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing well. So, yeah, I just recently played this game for the first time. And I have to say, I'm not sure how I missed it originally. I'm a big Metroidvania fan, so I try to get all these type of games.
Well, I mean, it's not a Metroidvania.
Well, yeah, sure it is. I mean, you have to get, unlock you gotta get fire to unlock the mountain, and so you kind of have to go, back and forth and collect items, and that opens up different parts. Like, you have to kind of go around till you get the hovercraft, and then that opens up part of the map, and then you have to get the airship, and that opens up more of the map, and
Well, yeah, I mean, but yeah, they're items. That doesn't necessarily make it a Metroidvania.
Oh, actually, that's exactly what makes it a Metroidvania. It's items. It's also a bit of a Souls-like.
A Souls-like? What do you mean?
Well, it's really hard.
That's not every game that's hard is a Souls-like. That's, I mean, well, actually, that's kind of how we use it today.
Yeah, that's what I mean. A bit of a roguelike too.
It's definitely not a roguelike.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a roguelike in the fact that when you die, you're you can't start over. That's it. It's one shot.
But that's not actually even true. You can totally start from the save point.
Oh, really? Huh. Well, that would have saved me a lot of time.
Okay, yeah. I mean, no, this is just a pretty straightforward JRPG. I mean, that's pretty much what it is.
Well, also that in a walking simulator.
You can't have a walking simulator that's a Souls-like. That's contradictory. If it's so hard you're constantly dying, that it's not a walking simulator.
I think it's definitely a walking simulator. Very, very, very clearly a Souls-like, roguelike, Metroidvania walking simulator with RPG elements.
It doesn't have RPG elements. It actually is an RPG. It's a JRPG. That's the genre.
Well, yeah, that's where it gets the RPG elements in, along with the walking simulator stuff.
There's no walking simulator.
I'm pretty sure you're wrong on that. There's a lot of walking to do.
That's not what makes it a walking simulator. That all of the menuing, all of the goals in the game, all the fighting, that's what makes it not a walking simulator.
I'm pretty sure it's just the walking.
No, that's not what makes that. That's not at all what makes it like that.
Yep, and then the hard parts makes it Souls-like. The deaths make it a roguelike. And the fact that you walk around and get stuff and that opens up parts of the map, that makes it a Metroidvania.
Okay, by that logic, like literally every game is a Souls-like, roguelike, Metroidvania, walking simulator with RPG elements.
No, I think that's pretty much true.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the call, Josh. We actually have a lot to cover, so let's just get back to it. This is honestly one of the most powerful scenes in the game is when, as you're on your way out, you spring a trap that locks you into a corridor and the walls start moving in to crush you. And, the twins sacrifice themselves, turning themselves into stone to stop the walls from moving. And, there's just this moment when the soft music comes up and you're like, okay, where's my items? But you can't unpetrify them. And the excuse in the game is that, well, they did it willingly. And so you can't use remedy or soft on them. It's not going to work. Now, of course, the, Elder Mysidia does that later, which defeats that whole thing. But, there were so many rumors going around the schoolyard. It wasn't really a schoolyard. I was like in junior high by the time, but, there's so many rumors that there was like a secret item that you could unstone them. But there's not. And they just, the elder saves them later in the game, but they do not return to the party. But, for those of us who did not know that at the time, this scene was like this scene is the thing that starts like this really kind of slow descent of grief in this game, where the bad guys are essentially picking your party off one by one. And this is the first members to fall, but they're not going to be the last ones. Any comment on twins stoning themselves?
I'm trying to hold back the tears, just remembering it.
I can tell you're torn up.
Yeah, it was a rough. The first time through it was a rough go.
Yeah,
no.
Oh man, the latest time I played this, it was the first time I ever used the trick where, to level up on Mount Ordeals. And so I was flying through this part of the game, just absolutely flying through. And so it was like all in one day, I had the 4 death scenes in a single day. And, it was by the end, it was like, holy crap, this game is getting depressing. It's like I even knew what was happening, that most of them weren't actually going to be dead, but it's like you lost 4 members of your party thinking that they're all dead. Actually 5 members, because the twins are 2 separate people. I keep forgetting that. But like really soon after one another. But yeah,
this is a game that's not afraid to give you stuff and then immediately take it away.
Yeah. It's like, it's like in all the people who like joined the series in Final Fantasy VII, and I'm not complaining about those people. We love you and we welcome you. But, that when Aerith died in Final Fantasy VII, a lot of us were like, yeah, we've been there, done that. Thanks. Because between Final Fantasy IV and V, there are major character deaths. 6 really didn't have any as long as you waited for Shadow. If you didn't wait for Shadow, then that could be a pretty sad scene. But from here, Cid gives you an airship. So now you are flying high, and you immediately go in the air and get another airship approach you like right away. And it is Kane there.
Everyone's favorite turncoat?
Yeah. And this was actually a pretty powerful scene too, because Cecil was like really like pleading with him. It's like, why are you doing this? And Kane's just like, hey, I need the crystal of the earth, go get it for me or we'll kill Rosa. And Cecil's like, like really trying to reason with him. And it's like, we're friends. Why are you doing this? And, but of course, Kane is evil right now. And so, you go over to the town of Troya and find out that the crystal was stolen from, by a dark elf. And this dungeon was pretty cool. But first you find Edward, who had also washed up after being attacked by the Leviathan. Thankfully, he does not join you and never will again. But he gives you the twin harp, and you're like, well, thanks, man. What does this do? And he's like, well, if I play my harp, the strings on your harp will also play, no matter how far apart we are. And we're like, great. I'm just going to throw this in the trash on the way out, because that sounds horrible. But you keep it and head over to the Dark Elf Cave. Which was a really, really cool concept, because the whole thing with the Dark Elf Cave was that it was this super magnetic place. And if you were wearing any sort of metal, then your character would be stunned in battle and couldn't move. And that, considering your party right now, which is Cid can wear metal stuff, but he doesn't have to. And he uses hammers, and so you can just give him a good wooden mallet. And Yang, of course, doesn't wear anything, because, he's manly man. And then you've got, Tella, which, wizards don't wear metal. And so it's, this really isn't affecting the party all that much, but you do need to trade out Cecil's gear for some weaker armor and stuff, and figure out how to keep him protected. But you'd counter the Dark Elf, and the Dark Elf's pretty much whooping up on you until Edward, like in this heroic feat of strength, like literally crawls out of his bed and drags himself across the floor to his harp to begin playing because he senses you are in danger and you need a lullaby. And the music actually distorts the Dark Elf's spells and messes them up. And so you're able to rejoin the battle much, much stronger, which is very, very cool. And you get the crystal back from him. And he has this is trippy because he has like an entire crystal room built, like just like everybody else's crystal room. It's like he was really obsessed with this thing.
I remember hating this cave.
Really?
Oh, it was awful.
It's a very difficult cave. This is like in the old days, this is where I would grind a lot, was right before this cave. Because this is a very long cave. Cecil doesn't have any good armor on, and it is a very long, tough cave.
I remember Sid had the peep ability, which would give you the stats of the enemies. And I remember filling notebooks with all the enemies I could find. I'd write down their stats. And
nice.
Because this was pre-internet, so I had no references guides.
Right, yeah, exactly. And that's why one of the reasons we were all like looking around for some cure for the twins is because we couldn't look it up, you know. It's like all the rumors that you could save Aerith, but it was worse because you could just by that time you could just look it up and find out no, you can't. But
you can save Aerith.
No, you can't.
Oh, you can. I did it. There's just this series of events you have to do. I'm not going to tell you because.
Oh gosh. Oh, so the ruling council, the Epops of Troya, allow Cecil to borrow the crystal. I don't know why. This is a dumb idea. He's like, can I borrow this and give it to our mortal enemy? And they're like, sure, Cecil, whatever. It's cool. One thing
you didn't touch upon here was the Chocobos. You had to get the black Chocobo in order to get to the cave, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and this is the only place you could find one. But your airship, because this is the crystal of the earth, everything in this country is like way overgrown forest, and your airship can't land in them. But the black chocobos can, and so you have to go to the local chocobo forest, get the black one, and fly over to the cave, which is a lot of fun. And those things are, well, as you well know, this has inspired my subscriber badges on Twitch. Twitch.tv/technofolkboy is all chocobos, and the top one is the black one. But yeah, that's a lot of fun.
It plays the great music when you're riding them.
Yeah, that's a really, really fun part. Well, to deliver the crystal to the bad guys, you've got to go up to the Tower of Zot, and they immediately put you at the bottom and make you fight your way up, which I don't know. I'm thinking Golbez wants you to like die in a battle so that he could just go pick up the crystal later. You know, I didn't quite understand all that, but you know, it's a dungeon.
That's kind of a jerk thing to do. I mean, you flew the airship to meet me before. Why can't you just do it again?
Right? Yeah, exactly. And just bring Rosa. Come on. So you have to fight your way up, and this is really getting into a tough area of the game because you come off that double boss battle into the Dark Elf Cave, which is brutally hard, and then you're coming into the Tower of Zot, which is another just big jump in enemy difficulty, and then you fight the Magus Sisters, which are just these really, really cool battle. But if you don't know what to do in it and you can't figure out the pattern, they will wreck you. And they are, Mindy, Cindy, and Sandy. And one is super tall and thin. One is kind of short and hefty. And one is very small and childlike. And it's like, they can combine to do a single delta attack. But they also, I think they're the first ones that start bouncing spells, aren't they, off reflect?
Yep. Yeah, they wall themselves and then bounce them.
Yeah. So this is a trick you need to learn in this game, is that spells can only be reflected once. And so if you know a spell it would be reflected, like if it's an attack spell, you like put a wall up on one of your characters and then bounce spells off of it, and it will hit the other, the bad guys, even if they have a wall up. And so this is something that they do really, really well. And they wall themselves and then they bounce spells off of each other at you. And until you figure out how to do that, you can't attack back because they're just going to reflect it back at you. And so I think there's one that, they do elemental spells. I think, does one of them heal? I think so. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think one of them could bring the other ones back.
Yeah. And so you kind of wanted to attack, to fight him in an order. And in that way we, to get through them all. But this was a pretty tough battle and a very cool one.
If I remember right, there was a way you could disrupt their wall too. If you reflected like a dispel onto yourself and hit them with it.
Oh, nice. I didn't know about that, but yeah.
I might be misremembering, but I thought I remember them nuking themselves.
Yeah, and you're right. Cindy can revive her allies. And so you really want to take out Cindy first. Otherwise, she'll just keep bringing them back. Once you get through that, you actually you come up to Cain and Golbez, and you give Golbez the crystal, but Golbez refuses to honor his part of the deal. Surprise, surprise. But Tella does not like the way this conversation is going. And this is one of the things that make me love Tella, because he's like, like the whole fate of the world is at the balance here. And at some point he's just like, okay, y'all are talking too much. You killed Anna, my daughter, and you're going to get it now. And so he just he's like, I'm done with this. And he goes into a rage and he starts popping Golbez with spells, and Golbez is just tanking them. And it's like really obvious that Golbez is just toying with the man until, Tella uses essentially his life force to cast Medio. And Golbez is astonished that he dares knows this spell, and gets his butt whooped. But in the process, Tella has essentially wrecked his own body, and he's dying. It also has the advantage of knocking the spell off of Cain. And so Cain just collapses to the ground, and Golbez is like dazed there and decides that, I probably should just leave. And Tella then dies. And he's, in his last words, he tells Cecil to avenge his death. And I think at some point, Sid makes fun of all the avenging. I can't remember if it was here or not, but at some point he does that. But anyways, they realize, hey, Rosa's still missing. They run to the other room, just as in the Japanese version, a giant spike is about to fall on her head. In the American version, that's just too violent, When we kidnap women, tie them up, and torture them to death, in America, we can't do it with spikes. We have to do it with giant metal balls. And so it's about to fall on her head, but you save her just in time. I absolutely love the animation on this, because the sprites are intersecting as they're moving away. And so you feel like you've just accomplished something incredible. but Rosa cast a spell to teleport everybody out to Troya. And
the Valvulus fight.
Oh, that is right then, isn't it?
Yep.
So, and it's in Rosa and Kane are both in it, right?
Yes.
Yes, of course Kane is in it. He's got to be in it. So, Kane is remorseful and wants to rejoin the party. He's like, I was under a spell, guys. And Cecil's like, all right, because you're my friend. And so they are attacked by Valvulus, who is the Archfiend of Wind. And this is a kind of cool fight because Valvulus will turn herself into a whirlwind. And if Kane will jump attack the whirlwind, he can knock her out of it. And because she's, she can't be hurt inside the whirlwind. Which is kind of a cool mechanic. And it's one of those things. It's like, you've got the same as like a lot of these battles is the timing of it. You've got to get Kane down, knock her out, and then pop her with as much damage as you can before she whirlwinds herself up again.
And there's the great repartee where Kane's like, oh, you want to fight in the air? I'll show you how to fight in the air.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah. So it's, so that's when, after she's defeated, goodness, this whole section is really hard.
Yep.
I'm thinking about this. It's like all these double bosses and, wow. So you teleport out and, Kane explains Golbez it's not just the 4 elemental crystals, but they need the 4 dark crystals too. And that's going to open up the way to the moon. And, so they need to get underground, and Kane was given this magma key, which will open the way. And so you have to go to this town called Agart and toss it into this bottomless well. And then magma just pops up and essentially opens up a mountain that you can then fly down. But see, as your ship, the Enterprise, comes down, you find yourself in the middle of a battle between the dwarves and the Red Wings. And you're shot down and you crash near the Dwarven Castle, where you meet King Giot and his daughter, Princess Luca. And everybody's convinced that the crystal's safe. And I was not ready for this fight. The first time, this was a death point the first time I played it.
Yeah.
Because you're like walking in town, and normally in this game, when you walk in town, it's time to rest. You've been beat up pretty good. It's like, okay, let's get some cutscenes in. Let's get some new armor. Let's get some rest. But as you're talking to King Giot, Luca notices that her Calcibrina dolls are missing, and you see them behind the wall, and the super creepy music comes on. And you walk back into the crystal room, and the dolls attack you. And as they're whooping up on you, they can combine Voltron style, into a giant, doll. And then they separate again. And so, this is another good one that it's like, if you don't time things right, then if you like leave a single doll too long when the other ones have died, that doll will form the big doll, and then they'll separate into 6 new ones. And this fight can whoop up on you if you don't plan it right.
This fight was always brutal.
Yeah. So this was definitely a death point for me the first time I played it. I remember it distinctly that they just demolished me.
I remember absolutely hating Luca because of her stupid dolls. I blame her completely for this.
Oh, yeah, I cannot wait. I can't wait. Have you seen the Luca parts of After Years?
No, I haven't.
Oh man, I can't wait to tell you about those. But we will do that in a future episode. But so once if you are able to defeat them, then Golbez shows up and he's ready to fight. And this is one of my favorite moments another one of my favorite moments in the game, because Golbez just kicks your butt up and down the room until and he's summoned a monster. But all of a sudden this mist monster comes in. You'll remember the mist monster was the summon monster for Rydia's mom, but this mist monster appears and blows away Golbez's summoned monster, and Rydia appears to
Not
save
only
the day.
does he summon a monster, but it wipes out your entire party except Cecil.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's I mean it's a scripted fight, so it's not fair. But it's like the first time you really get a taste of how powerful Golbez is, and you're like, oh crap, this guy, you know. But it makes that moment of Rydia's return all the more special, because she comes in when Cecil's almost dead and everybody else is dead, and appears, and she's actually an adult now, and that will be explained later. But you do drive off, you defeat Golbez, and you're like, huzzah! And then he turns. Okay, so I've always been confused by this scene. It seems like he turns into a hand that crawls across the room to steal the crystal. Is that how you interpreted this?
That's what it seemed like. I guess maybe I thought just his hand survived, and
right, yeah. It was super weird, and I don't think it's like a great moment in the game, and it kind of makes you wonder. It's like, well, why don't you just step up and like stab it, you know, like into the ground, you know? But Golbez steals the crystal anyway. So Rydia was taken by the Leviathan into the Fey March, where the summon monsters live, and time works differently there. And she's actually spent many years down there, even though it's been a very short time for you. And she is now an extremely accomplished black mage and caller, but she no longer can do white magic. But she is super powerful. And, I always like to get Cecil above level 60 before this battle, because if Rydia comes into the battle at level 60, then she can cast Medio. And it's just one of those things. It's like really nice. It's like, well, you faced one of my friends who can cast Medio. Now take another one. And I just really like casting Medio on Golbez. It's going to be my only chance to do so. So I might as well take it. So that's why she's an adult now, but she has come to help, and she's very powerful at this point, and she will remain so for the rest of the game. And so it's one of those things. It's like, wow, I'm really glad I saved that girl. At that point,
is that a Billy Madison reference?
That wasn't, but yeah, that, unintentionally, yes.
Yeah. One thing about this series of fights too, I believe this is where, when you buy the Super Nintendo version, it came with a strategy guide, and the strategy guide ended just before these fights. So you could grab it. Oh, you still have it? Nice. Yeah, I think it ended just as you basically throw in the magma key. So if you're playing, you're not worrying about spoilers, you'd you know everything coming up until this point, and then suddenly you're in the dark.
Yeah, I'm turning to it right now. Yeah, exactly. It's like the last picture it has is you standing in front of the Dwarven castle, and so this is the first time that you are completely on your own. The strategy in this, I mean, in the instruction booklet is, it's really just astonishing. It starts on page 21 and it goes through page 66. So like 45 pages of walkthrough. That's what, so like one of those things is that has kind of been lost if you bought a lot of these games secondhand. Especially like original Zelda. It's like if you don't have all the stuff in the book and you're like, I don't know how anybody found anything in this game. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, there's a map that came with it that showed you like the first several levels and the first several items, you know, and, they don't leave you alone at the beginning of the game. But, I always thought that was kind of funny that they did that. And now since we're all playing stuff secondhand and can barely get our hands on the cart alone, much less the instruction, we're like, I don't know where to go anymore. It's like, well, yeah. Where were we? We're about to go to Bad Bill, weren't we?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. At this point, Golbez has pretty much all but one of the crystals. And, are we going to, no, we're not going to Seal Cave yet. All but one of the crystals. And so the King Giat says that the Tower of Babel has been activated to the north. And this is actually this tower that starts out in the underground and goes through the mountains into the overworld. It's kind of a cool design. And it does feel like that long when you're trying to play through this level. Like I said before, this is a particularly brutally hard part of the game. And the Tower of Babel is a very long dungeon.
Was this one the plan to go steal the crystals back while Golbez was trying to get the last one?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so the Dwarven tanks were going to be kind of keeping the tower's cannons busy, and they're going to be shooting them all. And the party goes inside, and they essentially fight their way up, and they have to fight Dr. Luja, which is how I pronounced it. I don't know how you actually pronounce it.
My headcanon there was always Lugai.
Lugai would be a good one, yeah. And he's like a comic character. He's a clear mad scientist. And he has this he's a Dr. Frankenstein character. And he's created this monster that he tells to attack you, but then the monster attacks him. And it's a very, very funny battle until he kind of merges himself with the monster, and then it becomes a serious thing. So once you get through him, you're not able to turn off the machines to get the tower to quit shelling the dwarves. And so Yang locks himself into the control room and sacrifices himself to kind of just destroy all the equipment. Then as they're trying to get out, Golbez destroys the bridge to keep them inside, but Sid comes in with the airship that he's now fixed. And they fly out only to be attacked by the Red Wings. And so now Sid, basically as you're coming up through the ground again to the overworld, Sid gets a bomb and jumps out of the airship and blows himself up and the mountain around himself. So, that the way is sealed and the Red Wings are trapped underneath. So you've just now lost the final members of your party so quickly, one after another. And
he falls really far before he blows up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And it's like, and it turns out that he has survived. He's the one that I'm like, I don't think so, G. I just don't see how that was a thing that happened. Yang, I understand. Yang does survive. Tella is the character who's permanently dead. And, you do not get him back. He is legit dead. Or you don't see him again. Actually, none of these characters you get back, but, that one, Tella is the one that is dead. So, from that point, you actually go back to Baron. Sid, installs this like hook so you can carry the hovercraft from earlier in the game, and you use it to reach, Eblin, sorry. the castle of Eblin is deserted, but there's a cave nearby, and you go in and you find all the citizens of Eblin there, and they've been tormented by Rubicant, the Archfiend of Fire, the last of the 4 Archfiends, and they had, I think the king and queen had entered Babel by that cave entrance, and they're missing now. And so you find Prince Edge there, and Edge is now going to be the final member of our party. And he joins up because he's after Rubicant, because he's kind of pissed at him for taking, his parents away. Once you get in there, you find that Luja had turned the king and queen of Eblin into monsters, and you have to fight them. And this was like a tearjerker scene too, because halfway through the fight, they regain their sanity, and they just start telling you to continue killing them because they can't ever go back, and they're going to lose their sanity again. And so you have to finish them off.
They looked really cool too.
Yeah. These sprite designs were really cool. It was the way they transformed. It seemed more of like shadow play than anything to make them look villainous versus kind. And it was really, really, really neat. So I don't think you don't actually fight Rubicant here, but you get, I'm trying to look. This is the section of the story I get confused sometimes. Yeah, no, Rubicant retreats, and you find the crystals, but then a trap door opens and sinks you deep into the tower where you find another airship. And
according to this walkthrough, you do fight Rubicant.
Oh, do you?
Yep. Because he actually heals you before you start fighting him.
Oh, okay. Do you defeat him?
I believe so.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
He was a brutal fight, too.
Oh, he's hard. He's really hard. And his timing, because he'll cover himself with a cloak to defend himself. And the timing on his battles is tricky. He's very hard.
Yeah, if he's cloaked, your ice attacks will actually heal him.
Yeah, which is totally cheating. And he just does it without warning, and so it's like the active time battle system. It's like you put in your commands, and then Iridia will start thinking about the spell to work on it, and then he'll suddenly put the cloak up, and you've just healed him a lot. You're like, crap. But yeah, he's a tough one. When you fall through, you're not able to get the crystals, but you find another airship, and you can take it. Now you're stuck underground, so you take it back to Dwarven Castle, and King Giat tells you about the sealed cave where there's the last crystal, and it's sealed. It has a seal on it. There's a seal there. So of course you're going to open it because we're the heroes. It didn't make much sense to me, but that's what we do. So
you find Sid again as well, and he makes an airship so you can fly over lava.
Right. Yes. Yeah. You find out that he lived, and which is kind of insane. But
and this is also where you could take your first side quest to the Cave of Summoned Monsters.
Right. And if you do that, then you are able to get some really powerful. You can get actually Leviathan, and you can get Ashura, who is the queen. Leviathan is the king of the summoned monsters, and Ashura is the queen. And both of them are extremely powerful summoned monsters. And so there's a lot of good treasure down there, and a great, as we found out earlier in the episode, a great point to level grind. Because honestly, the sealed cave is kind of brutal.
And it's worth pointing out, in order to get those 2 summons, you have to defeat them.
Yes. Thankfully, there's a save point not too far away. The cool thing about that cave is you go through the level, but then you get to the town of summon monsters, and so you can rest up.
Yeah, the town was neat, multi-leveled, and you can see.
Oh yeah! Oh, I love the design of the town.
Yeah.
The lower level, most of it seems like these wooden platforms suspended in the cave, and so you can see underneath it to the level below, and it's the actual outline of the level below. It's a very, very cool design. But you can rest there, and you can kind of refresh yourself, and then take those 2 fights one at a time. So it's not that too difficult, because by now you should have figured out all of the wall tricks, and she constantly heals herself, but if you just put a wall on her, then she ends up healing you instead, which is kind of nice. Leviathan's really tough. And the sealed cave is very tough.
Yeah.
The sealed cave, a lot of the doors are kind of like mimics. They turn into monsters as you try to open them, and they are very tough. They will cast a spell in the second round that will just kill one of your players, and then they will summon a monster in the third or fourth round. And so it's very easy to get behind in the count against them. And so there's, if you can get it off, if you can, cause in the first round, it will tell you which character it's going to kill, and you can wall that character and reflect the spell back to him. But the timing's got to be quick on it, cause it's a pretty fast monster, and I was never really good at that, but, that's the safest strategy for him. But then, probably one of my favorite bosses in the game is here, the Demon Wall. And, Demon Walls have been in a ton of Final Fantasy games since then, because it was just so cool. It was just this possessed wall that was slowly inching its way towards you. And so it's like this visual clock that's like, yes, there's a countdown on this battle, and that thing is getting closer and closer. And it was a very, very cool fight. There is a secret to this cave that if you just want to skip it, you can. Back in the Dwarven Castle, when you originally went, after you leave, after Golbez steals the crystal, if you walk back into the crystal room, the crystal is there. They forgot to program it away, gone. And so you can grab it, and then you have a dark crystal. And so then you walk into the sealed cave, and you immediately walk out again, and you have the crystal. And so you don't have to deal with all the trap doors. I think you still have to fight the demon wall, but you don't have to deal with the whole underground level, because it is a very, very hard dungeon. But here is where Cain will support your every decision and be your best friend forever. Oh wait, no, that's later, because here he will betray you again and steal the crystal.
What? No way.
and Cecil's like, "Why, Cain? Why?" So now Golbez has all the crystals. At this point, I think you have to take the airship back to Sid, who puts a drill on it, right?
Yep.
So yeah, now with the drill on it, you can drill yourself back up to the surface. You head over to Mysidia, and at Mysidia, the elder tells you about, well, look, there was this old airship that the Lunarians hid that can take you to the moon, and we need to get it. And so
this is also where you could go do a side quest to the Sylph Cave, which is Yang's side quest. That's
right. Yes. Yeah. And this is where you have to revive him with the frying pan that his wife Sheila gives you.
Yep.
So yeah, if you go down there, you cannot wake him up. And then you go back up and you tell his wife, it's like, hey, some things happened to Yang, and it's hilarious. She's like, he's fine. Just when you see him, hit him with this. And you're like, okay, no, seriously, he's dead. And she's like, no, he's fine. Hit him with the frying pan. And you do, and it wakes him up, and it's great. You don't get him back, but it is very cool that you are able to find him and revive him in this very humorous way. Sheila is one of my favorite characters in the game. She's amazing. And you can also, if you go back to Baron, you can find King Baron's spirit underneath Throne Room. And if you defeat him, he'll give you the summon monster Odin, which is a very cool looking sprite, but is very, very worthless. And so it's fun for just to be a completionist, but it doesn't actually help you because it's an instant kill summon monster, but the monsters have to be super weak for you to instant kill them. And it's one of those things like, well, why do I need to summon you? I'll just kill them at this point. It's very disappointing.
There's also a rough fight unless you get the timing right.
Yeah.
Because when he holds up his sword, when he's going to attack, if you hit him with lightning, then you do super damage.
Oh, I didn't even notice. I didn't even realize that. That's a neat element. I mean, that's a cool idea because he does. Yeah, he raises up his sword when he's about to come swooping in. That would make sense if you could just light that thing up.
Yeah, hit him with lightning 3, and it's 9999 damage.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So in Mysidia, the Elder gathers everyone into the Tower of Prayers to summon the Lunar Whale, which is this airship that you can reach the Red Moon. And the scene of it coming out of the water is very, very cool scene. And I love this airship. I actually think the music for this airship is easily one of my favorite Uematsu pieces ever. It's so inspiring. It makes you want to go to the moon and kick some butt. And it's honestly somewhat of a letdown when you have to walk through all these caves on the moon because you were so pumped up by the music, and now it's like, whoa, okay, we're just walking again.
Yeah, you get everyone in the city doing their chanting thing.
Yeah, very, very cool. And so I mean, really at this point, originally I thought I'm at the end game here, and you're not quite in the end game. You go up and you find, on the moon, you find Fusoya in the Crystal Palace. And Fusoya is a Lunarian with an epic beard that he's wearing as a robe. He does have a robe underneath his epic hair and epic beard, but you can barely see it because of the epicness of his hair. And he kind of fills you in on what's going on. That the Lunarians once tried to colonize the planet, but they decided that they couldn't live at peace with people, and so they decided to live on the moon instead. But one Lunarian named Zemus was being a punk, and he wanted to take over everything. And they had restrained him underneath the surface of the moon, but he was still able to use his power to manipulate people. And Golbez is one of these. And so Fusoya's brother is Kluya, and Kluya went to the blue planet, which is our planet, and ended up marrying a human and had 2 sons, and one of them is Cecil. And the other one, I shall not tell you his name quite yet, even though it's obvious.
Bum, bum, bum.
It's Golbez. No, I'm sorry. Just forget I said that. So
you said Porum, right?
Porum, yes, it's Porum. Porum and Cecil, brothers. So Golbez has back on Earth, he has revived the giant of Babel. And the giant is now wreaking havoc on everyone. If you haven't noticed by now, this game has taken a very science fiction turn. And this giant is not like, a giant cyclops. This giant is like a giant mech. And so you go in to try to attack. And this is also a very, very, very cool scene. Where like all these airships are rushing in to attack, and you find out that like all of your former party members are part of this assault on this robot. And so, Palom and Porom have been revived, and they're with the Elder. Sid and Yang and Edward are all part of this fleet attacking this robot. And so, when they're attacking, you sneak aboard the giant robot, which is a giant dungeon. And we're definitely in the end game now, and this is the Mega Man boss rush, where you have to defeat everybody in a row again. And you find out that the Archfiends, all 4 of them, have been revived, and you're going to take them all on at once. And this is a fight. One by one, you do all the ones that you fought before, culminating in Rubicon again. And, right after that is when you fight the CPU itself, because this is what you do. And if you're a computer guy, this is what you do when you want to shut down a computer, right? You have to go in and hit the CPU with swords.
That's what I had to do with the arcade machine when it was doing an update. An update got stuck and I had to go in.
Yeah. So, the CPU is a cool fight because there are 3 components to it. One heals, one attacks. And so it's like a lot of the battles in this game is you have to find the pattern. You have to figure out which one to attack first. And, I don't remember this being a ridiculously hard fight, but after the Archfiends, that Archfiends fight was brutal. And so, this one right in a row is not easy.
I remember having a hard time with it.
Gosh, I need to, obviously I need to replay it because I need to replay this every year or so. I love this game, but I can't remember. When you shut it down, Golbez comes to attack, but Fusoya uses his awesome magic. By the way, Fusoya is a amazing wizard. And he knocks Golbez out of it, and Golbez remembers, like, oh, wait, I'm your brother. Kluya's wife had died in childbirth, and the humans had killed their father. And so Zemus had manipulated Golbez and turned him into Golbez. And now at this point, what everyone in the world is hoping is that Golbez joins the party. Unfortunately, he doesn't. But he leaves with Fusoya, and they head back to the moon intending to kill Zemus. But in addition to Golbez being free, Cain is now completely free. And he...
but is he really?
Is he really? He joins you for a short time, and then he stabs you in the back. No, he doesn't. He helps you escape, and he essentially just begs for forgiveness and doesn't think he can be forgiven. But Cecil, being Cecil, does forgive him, and they join the party. He and Cecil, Cain, and Edge tell Rosa and Rydia to stay behind and say, look, we're probably not coming back, but we want to go help these other 2. And of course, Rosa and Rydia sneak onto the lunar whale and reveal themselves when they get to the moon because we need them. And they get out and they go once they've reached the moon's crystal room, they go into the lunar underground, where we have the last dungeon, and it is a heck of a dungeon. I love this dungeon. In fact, I think it's great.
Another side quest alert, though.
You
can go get the Bahamut summon.
Oh yeah, is that that's on the moon, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's obviously going to be Iridia's best summon. By this point, she probably also has Nuke and Meteo, which is the level 50 and level 60 spell. And so she is a force to be reckoned with. She can do some damage. And so like, as you're getting deeper and deeper, I love this dungeon because it starts off as a normal cave, but then you start getting so deep, everything turns into crystal, and you like see the core of the moon below you. And every time you take stairs, it gets bigger and bigger. And, until you finally get to the very core where, you find Golbez and Fusoya fighting Zemus, and defeat him. Which is kind of a bummer because, you know, like you did all that work and you thought, wow, I should really be involved in the last battle. But oddly enough, the game doesn't have a last battle and the game is over. Wait, no, that's not what happens. In death, Zemus is revived into this creature called Zeromus. And Zeromus is really kind of the embodiment of anger and hatred. And Zeromus defeats Golbez and Fusoya and pretty much your entire party. And you are only saved because of kind of the prayers of everyone you've met along the way. And it's kind of this pep talk scene where each one of them gives you a attaboy. And
you can do it,
and revives part of you, and then Cecil uses a crystal that Golbez have given him to make Zeromus vulnerable, and then the fight begins. And this was a tough battle too. Even if you're way over leveled, Zeromus has a lot of hit points, and he can hit very hard, and so. This was just a kind of a fantastic last bad guy. The only thing I don't like about this game is Golbez himself had so much great personality and he was such a great villain. And I don't have that same kind of respect and affection for Zeromus. As worthy of a villain as he is, he's literally like just this amorphous force in the sky. Whereas Golbez just was like a very real and present, villain. But, that being said, it was still just a great fight. And, it caused you.
Sorry, one interesting point is you have to use the crystal to start off the fight.
Yeah.
Otherwise you can't do a thing.
Yeah, no, it will go very bad for you.
Remember listening to, Justin on the Retro Warriors podcast, whining about how he didn't know how to do it.
Wait, is that the one where they like called the Nintendo line?
Yep.
And they were like, well, do you have Rydia in the back row? Like, yes, of course I have Rydia in the back row. Oh man, that's hilarious. So then we get to the epilogue, which has some of the best music in the game. It's, the soundtrack, we're going to get into the soundtrack in a future episode, but man, the soundtrack is so good. But Fusoya returns to sleep and Golbez feels like he can't really be forgiven. After everything he's done, he doesn't want to face Earth. And so he's invited to stay on the moon. But Cecil, and one of the scenes that I find really touching is like Rose is encouraging him, saying this is going to be the last conversation you get with your brother, and so they say goodbye, and Cecil calls him brother, and the moon departs from its rotation around the Earth, and just goes away, and with the Lunarians on it. Edward becomes the king of Damcian, Edge the king of Eblan. Yang, this is what I mentioned earlier. The king of Fabul is just like, no man, Yang's better, so I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna just chill out. Yang's king now, and so Yang is king of Fabul now. Kane's fate, I think, is fascinating, and it actually sets up the best part about the after years, is that Kane cannot bring himself to forgive himself. And so he goes to Mount Ordeals to try to seek out, essentially he's trying to seek out the strength to keep himself from betraying his friends again. And, that turns into a problem for him, because at the beginning of the after years, which is a long time later, like, it's like 15 years later, he's still there, and he's not approaching it the way Cecil did, of just surrender and repentance. He's approaching it in the way of, I need to be stronger, which is really, really interesting. And, he's the only one who does not attend the wedding of Cecil and Rosa. Cecil has become king of Baron, because why not? I mean, they killed off everybody else, so might as well just take over.
So killed the fake king and the spirit of the actual king.
Right. Yes. We killed him twice. He's dead twice. And Rydia heads back into the Fey March to hang out with the Summon Marchers, monsters, much to Edge's chagrin, because he flirts with anyone who moves. But Rydia was a favorite of his, and so she's gone, getting older, much older, rapidly. And he's just longing after her. But that's kind of where we end, with Cecil and Rosa getting married and becoming king and queen of Baron. And the game concludes at that point. So now, if you haven't played the game, we just spoiled the entire. Did we give a spoiler warning?
No, you can edit it in. Drum, make a note to edit that.
Gosh. Okay, so this has been a super long episode, and I'm sorry to keep you so long. I just looked at how long we've been recording. Wow. Apologize about that, but any parting thoughts? Obviously this game just has an incredibly great plot and incredibly great characters.
Yeah, just everything about this game is fantastic.
Yeah, I think a lot of game designers would be tempted to make Cecil's trip up Mount Ordeals much later in the game. But I like that they did it early, because Cecil now has 2/3 of the game to prove how worthy he is. And so when he's crowned king at the end, it's kind of like there's a lot of Lord of the Rings in this, as well as Star Wars. But it's like at Aragorn, when Aragorn is crowned king at the end, you're like, well, yeah, he's Aragorn. And it feels like that here too. When Cecil is crowned king, you've gained so much respect for him, as a man and as a leader. You're like, yes, this is what should happen because of what a great man he is. And I don't think that would have happened if Ordeals had been much later in the game, where we didn't get to know Paladin Cecil, and all we got was Dark Knight Cecil.
Yep. Yeah, I love the interplay between the characters too. I mean, every character has their own unique personality.
Oh yeah.
Like Sid is constantly insulting and bickering with Tella.
Oh gosh.
Before Tella dies.
Oh, one of my favorite Sid moments is because Edge is pretty immature. Not like Porom level of immature, but Edge is pretty immature, and he's just this ridiculous flirt. And at one point where they're trying to fix the airship, Edge keeps trying to sneak off to talk to Rydia,
yeah.
And Sid keeps finding him and dragging him back, and it's It's all done without dialogue, and it's hysterical. But how focused Sid is, and how prone to anger he is and insulting everybody who's just not working as hard as he is, because he is an extremely hard worker in the game.
He is the quintessential crotchety old engineer.
Yeah. But this it is amazing because they do this in Part 6 and Final Fantasy 6 as well. When you have a large cast of characters, but each one has his own voice, and you really get to know these characters and how they respond differently in different situations, and they are very, very distinct from one another in very cool ways. But all of them, except Edward, really likable.
There's no Biggs and Wedge in this one, is there?
They are retconned in, and this is something you find out in after years. So there are these two high-ranking officials in the Red Wings that is taking Cecil and Rose's son Theodore out on his first mission, and that's Biggs and Wedge. But they tell the story later about how they were two soldiers on the ship that had attacked Mysidia at the beginning of this game. And so, kind of nice retconning, that those nameless soldiers on the deck of the ship at the very, very beginning, one of those was Biggs and one of them was Wedge. So, but I don't think that they're named at all in it. They might be in one of the redone versions, but I haven't played those. I've only played the original on SNES, which is why I still call all the Archfiends by their original names and I keep having to look at the new ones.
Wasn't the original harder than all the re-releases as well?
I'm not sure.
I thought I remember them toning it back. I might be mistaken, but I thought that was a thing.
Yeah. Now the American version was, I think the American version was a little less hard than the Japanese. I know they did a lot of changes, like they combined all of the healing items into just a remedy, whereas the original has all of the different types of healing items, like echo herbs and and antidotes and stuff like that. And they also took away some of the player character abilities, like the Dark Knight using his dark ability. That it's not part of the American version, but I think the American version was a little easier, but I don't know if they've toned down the difficulty. Yeah, I was surprised in replaying it not terribly long ago. It was sometime, maybe earlier this year. Once you return to Baron, everything after that is very hard. You really have to kind of keep on top of things, or just there's one boss after another will just really wear you down. I think didn't somebody say that in the? Oh, it was on a different post, and I can't remember it. It's it was when we posted the first episode on this, and put are we also remembering how freaking hard this game was in places? I loved it too, but holy crap!
Yeah,
it's like that sounds like something actually I would write.
I also noticed you conveniently glossed over the tail collector.
I did. So, all right. So the confession about the tail collector. There's this room in the last dungeon where if you fight in that room, you have a 1 in 64 chance of getting a certain battle. And if you defeat that battle, you have a 1 in 64 chance of getting the pink tail. And you can take that tail to the tail collector. And what was it that you get from it? Do you remember?
The adamantine or adamate ore.
Got it. And that builds something cool, I hope.
Excalibur, if you bring it to the blacksmith.
Yeah, that's right. So this room became notorious because, there's like a lot of hidden, obscure stuff in games. But, 1 in 64 times 1 in 64 is a big number. And it's very, that the chances are very, very slim that you're actually going to get that thing. Now, I tried because I wanted to 100% this game. I loved it so much. I've played it multiple times. And when I was a teenager, I wanted to 100% it.
That's 1 in 4,096.
Yeah. And so I went into that room, and that save file now has all 5 characters at level 99 because of that room. And I do not have that tail. And so, at that point, I was just like, I'm level 99. I give up. I'm never going to get this tail. And it was starting to annoy me. But there's just the pink tail kind of became like its own meme, that just described things that were like just ridiculous. Like you had to do something stupid in order to get something in a game. That was probably overkill. They probably could have toned those chances down quite a bit and still made it hidden enough. But yeah, wow. I forgot. Did you find that? Did you get the pink tail?
I did.
Yeah, I hate you. How long did you? Was it just one of those things where you just got it super early?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So I guess we should end it there because everybody's gonna look at this and like, oh wow, this is the longest episode we've ever done. And yeah, it is
worth it. Couldn't have picked a better game for it.
Yeah. This, I know technically Final Fantasy 6 and, Chrono Trigger are better games, but if this might be like my desert island game that I could just play over and over again because, I absolutely adore it.
I put the story above 6 and certainly above 7.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's going to be apocryphal to many listeners, but...
Yeah, well, when we get to 7, I will explain why 7 is definitely like a middle-of-the-road game. But it's not... It might not even be in the top half of the main series for me.
Wow, you went there, huh?
I did, yeah. Because, so my 3 favorite are the 3 Super Nintendo games. And I'm just doing the numbered ones, not any sequels, not any spinoffs. My top 3 are the 3 Super Nintendo ones. But I like 10. I like 10 and 12 next, I think. And then of the PlayStation era, 9 is my favorite. And so it's already in, at least in 7th place. But yeah, we'll get there eventually. And then people can throw things at us. I'll bring you on to explain why, you rank it so low as well. I have no idea where you rank it actually, but I'll blame you.
I can live with that.
Sounds good. I appreciate you being on and staying so long
with
with me.
Me on.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
So very good. So we will catch y'all next time. So we are not leaving Final Fantasy IV. I think we're going to take a 1-week break because we have an interview coming up, hopefully next week. But we will be back to talk about Final Fantasy After Years and also the music from Final Fantasy IV, which is epic. And so we will catch you next week.
Goodbye.
The Retro Zoo Super Show is brought to you by the Techno Funk Boy. Follow us on Twitter at Techno Funk Boy, on Facebook at the Techno Funk Boy, and sign up for our email list at technofunkboy.com. Also look for us on Spotify, iTunes, and Amazon for music. If you are so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast catcher. If you are not so inclined, you are obviously some sort of villain trying to conquer the world. Unowned music and gameplay clips are used for educational and critical purposes. Thank you for listening. Keep gaming. And once you have responsibilities that need to be done over time, then you can game later.